Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the CEO Spotlight. Today, I'm in Nairobi and I'm chatting with the infamous Daniel Yu. Daniel is the co-founder and CEO of WASOKO, formerly known as Soko Watch. And we'll let him do an introduction of himself and we'll get into it. Welcome, Daniel. Thanks for taking the time.
Pleasure to be here.
So, to kick off, we'd like to start with a little background, more like an origin story of yourself. Highlighting your upbringing, especially when you were young.
Sure. So I was born and raised in Southern California. I come from a multicultural family. My father is originally from Hong Kong. My mother from Peoria, Illinois. So very different backgrounds, but came together and started a family in California. And I think with that always had this appreciation and awareness of different cultures, different places, you know, the world being much bigger than just the suburb where I grew up. And had the opportunity to travel a lot with my family growing up too. They instilled in me a love of learning languages and many other things. And so I think that kind of deep sense of exploration and adventure was
still stuck with you to today.
Yeah, very much.
That's awesome. And when you were growing up, did you always know you'd be an entrepreneur?
I definitely did not. I played around with a variety of passions, interests. At one point, was going to be a professional composer. So was quite serious in music for some time. I think for me, it became the kind of natural evolution of just a very strong self-interest in pursuing different ideas, different topics that I found extremely fascinating, interesting, but might not necessarily fall into any given career path or curriculum.
Interesting. So what was the defining moment for you to turn into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, the defining moment is really when I stumbled across the circumstances, the environment that ultimately inspired WASOKO, inspired the start of the company, which came when I was doing a study abroad program, learning Arabic in Egypt.
Yes.
And so, you know, I had no intention of, I'm going to start a company, let me go out there, explore different ideas. It was, I was learning Egypt, got to know some of these shopkeepers in the neighborhood where I was staying. I had a background as a software developer, and I was coding up different things, you know, always looking for interesting projects, things to build. And this challenge, this situation of shopkeepers not being able to easily order and restock, get what they need, became very apparent just in that time, talking to them, getting to know how they're running their businesses. And to me, it seemed like an obvious thing to, hey, let me go try building something around that.
Yeah, it's super interesting that, you know, the journey of going there, seeing the problem. Why didn't you start in Egypt? Because you then went, I think, back to school. Like, how did you end up in Kenya and then setting up shop in Kenya versus Egypt where you identified the problem?
Yes, so how I ended up kind of navigating that whole journey was I was inspired in Egypt, was then back in the US, University of Chicago for my next year of studies after that time abroad, and entered an entrepreneurship competition at the school through which I outlined this idea, went through the whole pitch process, all of that, ended up winning a prize and a little bit of cash, and used that as an excuse to drop out of school and then start kind of working deeper on this concept. At that time, I was really not sure how I was going to kind of go to market with this solution, but definitely figured that needed the partnership of established organizations that were on ground, that would ultimately be customers, users of this technology. And the original inception of it was to have a order platform that the manufacturers, the actual consumer goods companies would use and license to help their operations. And so that led me to basically just cold emailing a bunch of these consumer goods companies, Unilever, Procter & Gamble, all these guys, and their offices all over different emerging markets. So I emailed the folks in Mexico, in Egypt, in the Philippines, India, and also in Kenya. And interestingly, the most excited responses that I got was from the people in the offices based in Kenya, which I think in retrospect was because of the very advanced nature of mobile money in Kenya. The fact that everybody was already using M-Pesa to do mobile money transactions. I think the consumer goods managers in the offices here saw an obvious opportunity to extend that kind of behavior that was already in the market to mobile ordering for stock as well. And so got some excited responses for them, got on a few calls, and they basically said, look, if you come to Kenya, we'll be the first people to try this out. I said, okay, looks like I need to go to Kenya.
Wow. And that was it. You just came to Kenya. This was what year?
This was 2015.
2015.
Yep.
Interesting. And so you get to Kenya, you pilot with these firms. Was it Unilever?
So Wrigley, the chewing gum company, was actually the first one that we started with. Yes.
So you pilot with Wrigley. How did you then move from a platform that they would use as a B2B order management platform to now what WASOKO is?
So that's a great question and covers kind of a key juncture in the company, which is basically the original idea, which was to just have the ordering platform, turned out to not solve the full problem in the market.
Can you outline what the full problem is?
Yes. So I think what I initially envisioned would be sufficient, or the problems to solve was, okay, shopkeepers need a easy way to place orders so that suppliers, manufacturers can then know who needs the products and then deliver it to them. Turns out that that's only half of the situation. The other half is, okay, as a supplier, as a manufacturer, I know who wants my products, which little shops and which places, but I don't actually have the capacity, the capability to deliver these orders to these shops, certainly not on an on-demand basis. And so that really is where I realized the scope of the problem that needed to be addressed is actually significantly wider than just the ordering platform, just the pure tech piece. And that was an interesting decision point, because I definitely didn't have any background in logistics. And the prospect of figuring out, okay, if we're going to solve the full problem here, this means we're going to have to get more directly involved in the actual delivery part. That was something that contemplated quite deeply. But ultimately, if we're going to solve the customer's problem, which is they want to be able to order for their chewing gum or their rice or their soap or whatever, and be able to get it reliably delivered to the store, then the platform that they're using needs to be able to guarantee that service, whatever else needs to happen in the background, in the back end. And so that led us to the conclusion that, okay, if the manufacturers, the suppliers can't deal this, can't make this happen, then we have to find a way to make it happen ourselves. And so we end up expanding the operations to become a fully integrated first-party e-commerce platform where we actually run our own distribution, do our own fulfillment, and of course that came with its own learning curves. But I think we've figured it out, and once we had that in place, and we were actually able to guarantee the deliveries to the shops because we were directly overseeing it ourselves. Then the usage really started to take off and helped us get to where we are today.
Awesome. Like, how do you feel about the change in the kind of the execution of the vision, right? Because the vision is the same. You're still helping these mom and pop shops get their goods without having to go through the hassle of going there and giving visibility to the brands. But the operating of it versus I'm going to build a tech platform now to I'm going to be a first party e-commerce platform. How did you feel about the transition of changing the business model to execute on the same vision?
I think the transition, while daunting to the degree that it meant diving into more things that I basically had no clue about.
Exactly.
That's a feeling that I've become very familiar with, and I think it's something that when I talk to other founders, especially very early stage folks, I like to emphasize, because I think the reality is this ecosystem is so early in what is, and there's so many new opportunities that become available, especially as technological capabilities become more and more wide-ranging in the market, that the reality is nobody knows really what they're doing, right? And if you're willing to jump in and work really hard, learn very quickly, then even if you are a 20-year-old university dropout, you can become an expert in last mile e-commerce logistics to mom and pop stores in Africa. If you dig in deep enough and you go close enough to the ground and spend enough time doing that. And the point is that you can become world class in that field in a couple of years. Whereas if you were going on something much more traditional, much more established, trying to become I don't know, an equities trader, at a New York bank, like that's a very established field, right? There are thousands of people who have tread that path before you. You're not going to be able to be, a differentiated talent in that space.
Interesting.
And so I think, the way that I approached it and the way that I continue to approach things is, we're pioneering in this space. And as long as we continue to keep our nose to the ground, continue to learn, continue to take all of the data and the developments and the evolution of the market to update our worldview on what the opportunities are, then we should always be at the front of the game.
That makes a ton of sense. And you talked about evolution of the market. Now, back in 2015, I think how Kenya looked and how some of your market looked is slightly different, if you correct me if I'm wrong, than what it looks now. What has been kind of the key changes that have happened over time, and how has that impacted the business model that you started out with? So for example, you started out with having to do the logistics yourself. I recall a time where you had to buy all these bikes and hold them. And then after some time, third-party logistics became a real thing on the continent. Are there other areas where you've seen the infrastructure on the continent improve to make your business model a little bit more, I guess, seamless to execute?
Absolutely. In addition to finding more and more established ecosystems of services that we can benefit from, I would say from the talent perspective, there's been an incredible evolution in terms of, I think the talent that's available in the market to hire, bring in staff in various functions, departments is, several levels higher than what it was back when we were getting started. And then I'd also say at the investment level, when we were getting started early days, there was nobody who was investing in these kinds of companies, in the market. And fast forward to today, there's all
too
sorts
many.
of too many, you could say. But no, it really is just quite unbelievable how much things have transformed in the market. And I think if that's any indication of what's yet to come in the African tech ecosystem, then it's going to be a very, very exciting next few years.
Yeah, we all hope, and we think that is going to be, is the bet we're all making on that side. So to change gears a little bit, if you could start over building a business, not WASOKO, any business, what would you do differently?
I would definitely move faster and more conviction in the early days of the company than I think I was. As I mentioned, I think I had a lot of this kind of self-doubt and somewhat limited self-confidence too in the early days, just knowing how uniquely unqualified I was to be doing so many of the things that we took on. And I think in retrospect, as I said, given that we really were pioneering something that nobody else had done before, that makes for a level playing field. And as I said, if you're in a level playing field situation with relatively few other players, and you're willing to work harder, learn faster than other people, then very quickly you can become top of the field. And I think that's the kind of approach and confidence in which I would go into any new business. And using that as a strategy as well for the businesses that I'd want to go into. Right, you want to go into a business where you have an unfair advantage, or at least where you have as much advantage as anybody else who'd be going into it, and can build up that unfair advantage by working harder, learning faster than other people. So I think that'd be the approach that I would take.
No, that makes sense, and I think given you were exceptionally young, I was shocked the first time I learned your age when I started off 40X. But I think you have achieved quite a lot, and I don't think when people think of you, they think of you in that context, as in like, oh, he's still not 30. Awesome. Moving a little bit onto the B2B e-commerce space. So this space, I think a year or two ago, was the favorite poster child business model for the Africa tech ecosystem. Do you think that there has always been an argument on asset light versus asset heavy? Do you do first party e-commerce like you guys are doing, or do you do ecosystem enablement? Do you have a view on the evolution of this business model?
I think when it comes to the B2B mom and pop store space, which is where we operate, as I described in our journey, the ability to reliably get goods to the shopkeepers is the number one thing, delivery on time.
Right.
And if you cannot guarantee that, then, the business doesn't work, the service doesn't work. And the reality is, if you look at the ecosystem of service providers, yes, there have been some players that have come up to provide third-party logistics services, but none of them, I would say, at the level of being able to operate their own on-demand delivery and at the level of efficiency and reliability that'd be required to run this kind of on-demand B2B business. And so what I've seen with everyone who has been operating this space, certainly in sub-Saharan Africa, is that this kind of discussion of asset light versus asset heavy, this doesn't even exist. Like, everybody has the assets, right? Whether you call them your own delivery network, or actually they're a embedded partner network, which is technically what we operate right now, it's the same thing. We all directly control our last mile logistics because that's the only way to ensure a quality customer experience. So I think the point is being that Africa's biggest need is for infrastructure and actual services, and this is not a market like the US where you can just, by being a orchestrator of different players in a given sector, you can eke out a little bit of efficiency and a margin and build a sizable business doing that. This is an ecosystem where the whole sectors need to be built up, and the whole players within them need to be established and built up operationally as well. And there's no shortcut to doing that, right? There is no kind of build an app and just marketplace, collect everyone and get your rents and your take rates from doing that. You have to roll up your sleeves and do the hard stuff as well. And to me, that's actually the opportunity, because that's really where you build your moat. It's to come in and set up what we've done, which is it's not just the last mile logistics, which is quite complex stuff, but it's also building out a supplier base of hundreds of different companies and understanding what it takes to actually source reliably from them every week the products that are being, and even now as well, what we're doing with our private label goods, where we're directly even contract manufacturing this stuff. Like, doing that in these markets is a totally different experience than if you're trying to set up your own consumer brand company in the US, right? And I think the complexity and difficulty of doing that and doing it well is something that is a huge competitive advantage in this space.
Makes the business more defensible over time. And I think want to put the spotlight a bit on WASOKO. Going from 2015 ordering platform, evolve to become, first party B2B logistics player, getting involved. Where is the business now? And what is next for the company?
Yeah, so where the business is today is definitely growing to profitability. That's our kind of core focus. How do we continue to improve the customer experience while also improving the profitability? Because they go hand in hand in terms of driving up the utilization, the efficiency of each of the assets and cost centers that we have in the company. And so that's really where we're at, is how do we kind of do what we're already doing, but double down on the areas that are really going to drive the customer experience and the utilization of what we have. So this is really kind of figuring out how do we get the goods that our customers want cheaper and more reliably. And that's where actually the big push with private label has come in, because we have all of this data about what type of soap do the shops in Nairobi most like to buy. And okay, we've identified that soap, its characteristics, its size, its scent, whatever. And now we can go and find a soap factory, the vast majority of which are underutilized, and negotiate directly with that manufacturer, who most of the time we already work with, and cut a deal where we say, okay, we're going to make WASOKO soap now or whatever, and that's good. Exactly, yes. Smart Pick soaps, one of our main brands. And bring that to market. And you know what? It's going to be 15% cheaper than the comparable soap, the leading brand. But it's exactly what customers need. And especially in this environment, this economy, that's fundamentally what people are looking for. Our purpose as a company is to help communities get more for less. Right? That's what we're here to do. Right? And if we do that, and we do that with ruthless focus and efficiency, then that's exactly what's going to allow us to achieve our goals, whether it's profitability, growth, customer satisfaction, and that's what we're here to do.
No, I think that I was going to touch on. I was going to ask a question about how you're going to get to that profitability, but it looks like all those things are kind of interconnected, right?
Completely.
Makes sense. So for private label specifically, do you have concerns about the reactions of other suppliers in the space?
I would say the leverage that we've built up in the partnerships that we have with the suppliers and manufacturers that we work with is such that we're the ones that really kind of can call the terms on who we work with, what we decide to do as a company. I'll make the analogy to a supermarket,
right?
Where most large supermarket chains in the US and elsewhere will have their own private label. They'll have their own in-house brands, and they put them on the shelf right next to the Unilever brands, right next to the Procter & Gamble brands as well. And I'm sure Procter & Gamble and Unilever would prefer that there wasn't the cheaper house brand sitting right next to them. But what are they going to do? Are they going to pull their goods from the shelf? Because then the only brands that are available are the ones remaining on the shelf where everybody's coming through. And so in our situation, we're basically the ones who control the shelf. We control the virtual shelf, which is the range of products that 50,000 mom and pop stores across 6 African countries can get delivered free of charge to their shop. So you want to be a part of that, you don't, right? And if you're upset because there's better value products that are now sitting next to yours, then go ahead. Because ultimately this is what's best for the customer. This is what's bringing them value. And if you want access to this unique channel, then you have to play in the sandbox with everyone else.
No, I love to hear that. I think it is definitely kind of the thesis that we had about being able to kind of aggregate all the demand, and now seeing the leverage and the power that has play out real time in the market is actually fascinating. That's super cool. So back to B2B e-commerce as a sector, what solutions are still lacking in this space, and why do you think they don't exist?
The biggest challenges, interestingly enough, I find are really more on the manufacturer side. The biggest operational challenge that we face day to day is stock availability.
Stockouts,
Yeah. So if you look at these manufacturers and how they run their businesses, it's it's shocking. The amount of or just the level of unreliability. We place a purchase order for 6,000 boxes of soap this week, and the supplier comes back and tells us we can only get 4,000. And it's like, what is going on? Like, we're not serving the market here. And I think there's a lot of factors that go into that in terms of just the level of efficiency and professionalism at the manufacturing level is still not yet where it can get to. But that's also, once again, kind of where private label and kind of us taking a more direct role upstream in the value chain is critical, because at least if we're controlling the product and we can set the production schedule such that, okay, this month we need 10,000 boxes of soap, next month 12,000, month after 15,000, whatever it is, then we can at least be secure knowing that we're going to get what we need when it comes to the WASOKO brands. And as we continue to drive those and push them with the customer, not only can we win in terms of on-time delivery, best price in the category, but also reliability in terms of always being available to serve you and your community. Once again, that's just a winning value proposition.
Got it. So fixing the supplier side, and it's not just about, it goes back to like manufacturing capacity. Yeah. Is it a capacity problem, an operational problem, financing? Like what exactly?
I think kind of all of the above.
All of the above. Okay.
All of the above. But I think that is an interesting opportunity, and would love to see more companies, more startups really tackling and maybe figuring out how to disrupt and improve operations at this more industrial level. Obviously, I think a lot of tech founders, companies are very much attracted to the consumer end of things. But the big challenge, on this continent is, the individual consumer has very limited disposable income.
That's true.
And so fighting to get kind of more of their wallet share or more of, more efficiency or profit pools out of them, it's a very, very, very tough approach. Whereas I think, if you focus more at that industrial level and just, recognizing that there are so many best practices that have been proven and established in higher income markets on how do you run a factory well, what are the kind of analytics, what are the kind of tools, what are the kind of best practices that are needed, and if there's a way to kind of approach and focus on that as a business opportunity, that definitely strikes me as an area where there's a lot of low-hanging fruit.
So that's super interesting. I think that the question is, how do you do that? I mean, venture capital is obviously not the only funding source, but how you build, if you're going to go the venture capital route, how do you build a scalable business, optimizing factory operations? I guess it's a good challenge for founders out there. Awesome. So currently, there are a lot of players in the market. And I think that we've been at this long enough to now start seeing regional players emerging. I won't call them winners yet because it's still fairly early. We've got the West African players, we've got the East African players. You can see who the North African guys are. South Africa is a little bit. How, in your mind, how does this play out if you truly wanted to build a Pan-African B2B e-commerce platform? What is the end game?
It's a billion-dollar question. I would say that it is perhaps not as straightforward as a lot of people might think it is, in the sense of building a Pan-African business, for which we have more experience than most, given the 6 countries that we're now in, is not as easy as just planting flags in different places and coloring in the map, right? There's a lot of localization that needs to happen in terms of understanding how to operate in different markets. And the most challenging thing in our space, going back to it, is the supply chain. It's the suppliers. And so the brands of products, the brand of soap that is sold in the market here in Nairobi, and the people who make that soap and who are distributing it right now are completely different and independent from the people making soap and the brands that are available in Nigeria.
Sure.
And so, this is not a situation where you can just automatically extend your capabilities from one market to the other side of the continent, 5,000 miles away. You have to figure out how can you get goods at the best price with reliable availability, and set up, of course, the on-the-ground delivery network to be able to make those available to customers, mom and pop shops there as well. The good thing that I can say is the mom and pop stores themselves largely do face the same challenges across markets in terms of not being able to reliably get what they need on time at the best price, reliable availability. And so I think, that kind of playbook in terms of focusing on solving those problems is something that is generally applicable. But it's the upstream supply chain piece, which is, I think, much harder to scale and figure out. Theoretically, where we've seen, real advantage of what we've done with the 6 countries we're in is these are 6 countries that are all neighboring each other.
Yeah.
And what we've been able to do is go basically neighbor by neighbor and figure out what products do we already have in, for example, Tanzania that can also become available to and distributed in the market in Rwanda. And using that existing supplier base to then give us a foothold to then build on the products that are needed in a new country is something that we've seen be very successful in our strategy. But it still takes time. There's always new products that need to be added as well. And I think as you scale up too, it becomes more and more of a complex system to manage as well.
Right, got it. So does having a Pan-Africa company, is it a realistic goal?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it is absolutely possible.
Yeah.
But you would have to be extremely strategic around how you manage your different regions as clusters that are, definitely interlinked, but cannot be run with the kind of one overall kind of book of products. You're going to have to localize. You're going to have to make sure you have the right offering, the right price. I mean, this is actually where a big blocker right now is still the policies. So the reality is we have 54 different countries on the continent, each of which have their own tariffs and duties and requirements on the goods that can be bought and sold and brought in between them. And this is a big barrier right now. The good thing is this has been recognized, and we do have the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, which has been ratified by 53 out of 54 countries and is being slowly implemented in small bits and pieces to eventually create a single market for goods, similar to what we see in the European Union between the 27 countries there. But that's going to take time. That's still years away from kind of full fruition. That being said, I think if we're kind of building out this presence now, we're kind of doing it on hard mode currently, where we are having to navigate each of the individual country requirements and make sure that we have the right selection of goods for the local market, and things become more and more opened up, then this infrastructure, this capability that we have in place now is only going to become more supercharged as the continent's economies become more integrated.
That's cool. I think it will make a ton of sense once, the agreement has been fully, because definitely agree with you. Expand and operating each African country is very different. Even if they're neighbors, you'd realize that it's not the same country by country. So I think that is going to be a big driver for Pan-African play here. I was just really curious about how you thought about that. In terms of the current funding environment, and I'm sure you're not immune to, or you've heard that fundraising announcements are down and the volume of funding has gone down. In addition to increasing, I guess, cost of living, inflation, volatility in currencies, given you operate in different markets, are you seeing that each market has the same exposure to kind of in terms of the overall macro for that country? And how are you positioning, like how does it affect your business as WASOKO being in all these different countries?
Great question. I would say that the fact that we do operate in 6 countries is a huge advantage for us right now. And specifically the fact that we operate in 6 countries and we actually have very diversified business between them. No one country is the majority of our business. And so what that means is that you can have a macroeconomic shock in a country like Kenya, where unfortunately we have seen some challenges in the larger economy. The Kenyan shilling has really slipped over the past 6 months against the dollar, and these are things that are definitely challenging. And you see it, how it impacts the ecosystem, how it impacts the purchasing power of our customers, average citizens. But at the same time, we go next door to Tanzania, and the economy there is roaring. We see very fast growth happening. Our business there is bigger than ever. In fact, we'll probably overtake Kenya by the end of the year. And so, that kind of performance, really helps kind of balance out, any individual dips that are happening at any time. And I think, in this business model where you do have these volatilities, you have these shocks. Ultimately, I think diversification between different markets is the strategy that you have to pursue. All of these economies, all the countries that we're in, are extremely high potential, and all of them have, for the most part, over the past 5 years, shown tremendous growth. Both for us as WASOKO, but also on a macro level. But we have to expect that there are going to be ups and downs at any given time. I think the best thing that you can do is expect them and build your business such that even if there is a big shock in any given place, that you're still going to be able to grow and be successful overall as a group as these things happen.
Got it. Have you changed anything about the way you run operations in this downturn?
We definitely have become, very focused on making sure that we are maximizing the efficiency of all of our assets, right? So whether that's the actual logistics, whether that's really getting deeper in these value chains to figure out how we can get more margin, drive better value, and then also looking at how do we make sure that each one of our people are set up to kind of give a maximum contribution to the team. I think all of these things have been kind of very top of mind.
Got it. To end here, I wanted to touch a little bit about you. Back to Dan. How are you? Are you fulfilled? Starting back in 2015 up until now, are you enjoying the journey? Are you fulfilled? Curious, what is the current state of?
Absolutely. Look, I can't imagine anything else that I'd be doing right now that would be nearly as interesting, educational, fascinating as what I continue to do on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the ongoing journey to where I, most days wake up and I'm just diving into something to kind of figure out, how do we contract manufacture a soap, in a given African country, and like really figuring out that process, understanding what are the opportunities, what are the nuances, what are the challenges, and then doing it, actually bringing it to life, is something that remains extremely fulfilling. And so I don't expect that to change anytime soon. I think there's plenty of areas still for growth and learning ahead of us. And so that's feeling good on my side.
What aspects of your skill set have you had to develop the most over the past 8 years?
I would say definitely growing as a leader, as a manager, of which I had zero experience with prior to starting the company. It's for first time CEO. Really developing the skill to have tough conversations, to give feedback, both positive and constructive. Those are areas that I think I was not necessarily as naturally inclined to beforehand. Might have had a somewhat conflict-averse personality, but you have to recognize when you're CEO of the company, you're responsible for all the people, all the customers, the experience that sometimes, of course, you do make mistakes, you hire the wrong people, or something doesn't go as planned, and you have to be able to communicate that and help get back on the right path. And so that's something that I think I've been very kind of conscious of in my journey.
Got it. In all the hiring that you've done in the past, with the ones that you'd say went super well, what were the things you did to ensure that those hires came out to be exceptional performers in the company?
I think ultimately the best performers we've had are the people who have just completely outperformed any potential that we thought that individual would have had coming in. So we've had amazing individuals who started out as delivery drivers who are now managing entire warehouses for us. And those are the people that I am just so excited to see still in the company 5-6 years later, some of them. And it's I think setting people up and making it clear to them that this is your company too. And back to one of kind of our core policies, we give every single one of our employees equity. So they are all owners in WASOKO as well. And that value that's created is ultimately on you, as a WASOKO owner too, to kind of prove and demonstrate that you can come up with whatever ideas, suggest whatever project initiatives that ultimately are going to help us boost our share price, which is it's the same share price for me as it is for a new joiner at the bottom level. And so I think giving people the room to really kind of demonstrate and challenge them to say, hey, we want to see you outperform, right? You might be in this role, as an intern or whatever today, but if you perform, then there's no reason why, you can't, rise to the highest level of the company as well.
And also participate on the upside when we all do super well. What is one, I guess, a lot of investors are realizing the challenges, the operational intensity of the B2B e-commerce business model for in order to maximize margins, or the things or the innovation that you have to build. And there is, I would say, that sentiment, a little bit skeptical about the model. What would you say to investors about the model that you think today they're either not appreciating or taking into consideration when they see the business operating in this space?
Great question. I would say that, first and foremost, this business model is not new. Distribution has been around for thousands of years. When you look at the goods that we're supplying to the market, rice, sugar, wheat, these are products that have been traded profitably, in these markets and all around the world, for centuries. And that is, that has been done historically, manually, traditionally, and therefore has been limited in its scope. If you look at the traditional traders, distributors who are here in Kenya, they've been running profitable businesses for decades, usually family-owned, whatnot, just on kind of pencil and paper.
Right.
And that is really where the circumstances have changed now, and where there's the opportunity to take what might be a small or regional, profitable distribution business and actually make something that can be national, multinational, potentially continental-wide. And that's only possible with the technology component of it. And the operations of doing that right are definitely not easy. And, I've had to learn the hard way, directly myself, how to make that happen. But, if we look at where we're headed now and, the efficiencies that we're starting to get, and what these economies of scale actually unlock, especially in terms of getting up further in the supply chains with things like the private label products and being able to really kind of guarantee a superior value and quality product for our customers. That is something that only is possible when you're taking what was previously an informal traditional space, extremely fragmented, millions of these small shops across Africa. Only is it possible through technology to aggregate their purchasing power together and build out, on-demand delivery services where you can track and route every vehicle to efficiently get those products to those, tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of shops, that you can really unlock something that truly couldn't be done before. And so, what I see is we're coming to a space that is proven, something like $600 billion a year of basic consumer goods being sold through mom and pop stores in Africa. That has been served, that has been done by profitable players for decades. And now coming in with a technology first approach to how can we build something to a scale that was never before possible in what is the largest segment of the African economy. And so, I think from that perspective, it's undeniable that, as basic incomes rise, people, a huge portion of the population still hasn't even met kind of basic subsistence in terms of their consumption and buying of regular consumer goods, that this space is only going to continue to grow exponentially. And, really the only question is, can we execute? Can we execute in terms of the operations, the technology, and, the supply chain to be able to serve it? And I think, as far as where we're at, what we focus on and what we're demonstrating now, I 100% believe that we'll be there.
That's awesome. Final question for you. What are some of the things that you still struggle with today as a founder?
I think the biggest thing that I struggle with at the moment is ensuring that I don't come in as a reckless cowboy with all sorts of big, bold, crazy ideas to a given situation, given team, and otherwise disrupt the meticulous, detailed, important work that is being done in service of kind of improving our foundation or something else. I think as a founder, I am naturally very inclined towards new, exciting ideas. And I think at this scale of company, I sometimes struggle to recognize that it's not just kind of me in a room with 10 other people throwing out random ideas and figuring things out every day. That for the vast majority of our operation, we are building up something that is more akin to clockwork, and that has a rhythm and a cycle that needs to be kind of ruthlessly managed and optimized. And if I just kind of come in and say, okay guys, we're gonna do something new now, stop what you're doing, everybody on this, obviously that's something that can disrupt the good work that we're otherwise doing. So I think that's something where sometimes I have to try to contain myself and make sure that I don't just come in too hot and heavy with the latest exciting new thing that I have in my head. But yeah, that's something that I think it's hard to lose, given that's what got me into this in the first place.
That's true. That is right. And it's I believe it's part of the evolution from being founder to now being a CEO. And I think a lot of times that transition and just translation gets lost, and most people get bored because now there's process and there's all these other things, but you seem to still be enjoying it. So that's fun. Thanks for taking the time. This has been a great chat, and hopefully we do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Pleasure's all mine.
All right.